welcome to the BPD Bunch. I'm your host, Xannie, and today I'm here with Katja, Jack, Madhurima, and Jay. We're continuing our conversation from Wednesday about empathy. If this or other BPD-related topics interest you, please make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you do not miss anything. Now, one of the things that we found while researching for this episode was something called the borderline empathy paradox. Now, I'd never heard anything about what this is, so it was really interesting to me to check it out. And the empathy paradox is, or borderline empathy paradox, is characterized by enhanced empathy in spite of impaired interpersonal functioning. In other words, it corresponds to a peculiar ability of certain patients with BPD to recognize even subtle emotional states of others without the corresponding ability to facilitate interpersonal relationships. So does this resonate with you at all? And if it does, how do you reconcile having empathy with moments where you might react in a way that someone else interprets as unempathetic?
I think I have a recent example of this. So obviously I do struggle with empathy. I struggle with accessing it, with expressing it. And I have a friend who was sadly diagnosed with cancer quite recently. And that's been quite a difficult situation. Obviously, cognitively, I completely understand how she might be feeling, you know, what she's going through. And when she's explaining that to me, it's quite difficult for me to actually feel anything emotionally. But cognitively, because I understand her position and I do want to be a good friend and I want her to know that I'm there for her, I've tried to support her as best as I can in practical means, because in the absence of empathy, that tends to be my go-to to show that I care. So it's things like offering to clean her house for her if she's not up to it, driving her to appointments and things like that. And we actually had a conversation recently where I said, I actually feel bad about the fact that I don't give you anything emotionally when you're talking about what you're going through. And she said, do you know what? It's actually better for me sometimes to be around people that don't react to me emotionally, because I feel like it's more of a safe space and I can talk about whatever I want without the fear of upsetting you. So I don't know, like I do think it has its advantages. I mean, they're probably pretty limited advantages, but in certain situations, a lack of empathy can actually maybe be a good thing for the other person.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's kind of like what some people may typically think of as an unempathetic reaction actually ends up, for in some cases, being useful. I think that's good though, because you're using your skills where and when you can in a way that's productive, right?
My family actually has this saying that if you ask Jack anything, he will always, how he's feeling, when he thinks about something, he'll always have the same response: I don't care. That's my way of showing that I don't want to put so much emotional energy into something because I know it's going to drain me. But my family knows that if it's something important that they know that they need me for, they need that emotional reaction for, they can come to me. They know that they can come and talk to me. I will be there for them. Yeah, I may not show it on my face. I may not react the way they want me to, but they know that if they really need me for them emotionally, I will be there for them. I'm usually one of the first people they call when something happens where they need somebody to talk to. So yeah, I may not always show it. I may not say I don't care, but I do deep down.
Yeah, I really resonate. I mean, when I read the empathy paradox, I was like, oh, this is like me. Because to me, it's a totally different step between being able to recognize that somebody is feeling something and actually extending compassion towards them. Like, to me, those are entirely separate processes. And now I am very good at being able to do both of those in most situations. But there was definitely a time where I could see somebody's emotion and it just wouldn't go beyond that. I do sometimes wonder if there's like some ADHD challenges like mixed into that, because I have the same problem, not regarding empathy, but like seeing a problem and thinking that I need to find a solution. Like, I will see a piece of trash and be like, oh, there's a piece of trash. I won't think, oh, I should pick this up and do something with it. And I know that a lot of that is ADHD related. And so I guess I just think that's kind of interesting how some of these things can really overlap for me, where it's hard to tell what comes from what. And there's just this thing where, like, it takes active work for me to observe something, an issue, and then think, oh, I should do something about this. Or in the case of empathy with other people, oh, somebody's going through this thing. It's an extra step for me to actually think about, oh, what might they be thinking right now? What could I be doing to be the most helpful? Those things didn't occur to me automatically. I had to really work to get myself to think that, which didn't really make sense because I wasn't raised in an environment where that kind of behavior was encouraged. My family was always like, I didn't say the word empathy, but like politeness, trying to figure out how you can help others in distress was definitely something that was encouraged in my family. So I don't really know what happened. But at some point I was just like, oh, I can see the thing, and the solution just completely eludes me.
I think for me, the empathy paradox mostly comes with people who I'm really, really close to, or who I used to depend on for my own emotional stability back when I did not have the skills to regulate my own emotion. The problem was that I did not know it, but subconsciously I was expecting the same empathy from their side because I was not able to navigate my own emotions. So, for example, this is a conversation I had with my friend when she was going through a lot of stress and anxiety because of exams, and I could relate to it because we were on the same course, and we took a whole day off just to take a pause and rejuvenate ourselves and before we got back to studying. And in my mind, I was doing it for her. I mean, I was trying to show her that I understand the kind of pain you're in, so I'm trying to help you out. And what happened is, a few days later, I was going through a rough patch at home, and I called her up, and I was kind of expecting the same kind of reaction which I gave to her. And that obviously was not the same thing. I mean, she tried to help me in her own way, but I got so angry because I was like, I understand how you feel, but you don't. So, I used to take that stuff so personally. And I think that's where the interpersonal problems came into existence in the first place, because I got a lot of people telling me in a very harsh way that we are not there to solve each other's problems. I am here to help you through your problem, and you're here to help me through mine. But, it's not my responsibility to solve yours. And that just got me angrier. So after I learned slowly to take care of myself, I think I have a good hold on it with cognitive empathy. But yeah,
I just feel like a walking contradiction sometimes. I so relate to what you're talking about, because there have been all these times where I'm just completely unempathetic, but then there are the times where I have gone above and beyond for someone, and I'm like, oh, I took your emotion as my own, and I did all these things. And then when they're not there for me in the exact same way, I hate it, because I realize in retrospect it makes it look to the other person like all the things I did to help them came with strings attached. Oh, I did this because I expect you to treat me the exact same way. I took the golden rule very literally. Treat people exactly the way that you expect them to treat you. But I took it to I'm going to demand that you treat me the way that I went above and beyond for you, right? And some people just didn't have those same skills. And now I look back and I just think, wow, no wonder people thought that I was manipulative or all these things, because definitely the way I behaved made it look like everything was conditional, even though that definitely wasn't what I was thinking at the time.
I have a really hard time with this topic because my definitions of some of these things do not match what the average person's definitions of some of them are, right? Of empathy, of what it means to be supportive, to be attentive, to communicate, etc. I never go and do something with the intention of being able to then sit afterwards and wait for the person to reciprocate it. But at the same time, I do sit there and think, I've also, by not having any expectation of that nature, allowed people to exploit the hell out of me. And that's the flip side of it, is that in most relationships, reciprocity is super important, actually. And although you cannot expect that somebody necessarily matches your input, because, as I've just said, definitions are different for different people and what capacities are different for different people. But I think you should be able to expect people to also be there for you. And I have noticed now more so than in previous years, there's a real issue with this. I think a lot of people really sort of think that they don't owe anyone anything anymore. We've lost a lot of that, a lot of like basic levels of care and support for each other. And it's something that I struggle with a lot. And I find that my interpersonal relationships get affected by this, because for me, it's not really something I have to think about. It's always been quite standard, and I think I'm fortunate for that. But I learned, kind of young, like to be supportive, to be attentive to other people's needs. I also, over perceive subtle changes in behavior. So I really related to that part of the paradox thing, which can sometimes be hellish. It means I notice things that I wasn't supposed to notice. I do think something that would help all of us really is like for everyone to kind of get back to that basic principle of, we do kind of owe each other kindness and support when we're building relationships, friendships, whatever, with others. That shouldn't be a big ask. And I think we should all be a lot more maybe intentional and genuine with what we actually have capacity for, because I do wonder if everyone, a lot of people now sometimes perceive that they have no capacity when maybe they do. I'm not sure. I think that's something we should revisit for sure.
What do you wish others understood about the complexity of empathy as experienced by someone with BPD?
Ooh, I want to go first. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
In my opinion, people with BPD have probably have the most empathy you can meet. It's just the fact that we sometimes allow it to affect our own mental health and our own emotions, that it seems that we may not always be the most empathetic person, because we have to protect ourselves very much with it when it comes to our empathy. So that's why I want to let you know that we are more empathetic than you think. We just have to protect ourselves because it can get.
For me, I think it would be wanting people to know that everyone's expression of empathy is different and nobody is going to express it exactly the same as someone else. So, like the fact that I don't have much effective empathy, I don't think it makes me a bad person. Like not having effective empathy is just one facet of me as a person, and I think that there's so much more to being empathetic than just being able to take on someone else's emotions. Like, can you respond effectively to those emotions and in a healthy way for you and the other person? And I feel like cognitive empathy is something that I've had to learn. Like I said earlier, it's not innate. Like it wasn't something that came easily to me. It has become a skill, but I do think that there is more to being a decent human being than your capacity to experience effective empathy.
Oh, 100%. I mean, sometimes I envy you a little bit, to be honest, because I feel like, it's great to be able to have both, but if I had to choose, I would choose cognitive empathy, just because it is sort of, it does seem more skill based, right? It's a thought, it's an act, it's a cognitive action rather than this like what effective empathy always felt to me, this sort of uncontrollable sponge-like quality of other people's feelings. I think if there's something I'd want other people to know is that it is possible to be affected by someone's emotion, so having effective empathy, and still not have the skills to be able to react in a compassionate way. And I don't say that because I think other people should accept my bad behavior or abusive behavior. Absolutely, when I have been really problematic, I think it's important that other people set their boundaries with me. In my experience, a lot of people found me paradoxical because I would claim to understand their emotion, and yet I wasn't able to treat them in a way that they found loving. So I don't really blame people for not wanting to put up with that. The reason I think this is important is because once I graduated from just lashing out at everyone to actually trying to make things better, having other people understand that there was this disparity between my empathy and my action helped them understand what was going on. And in moments when I really could use their help, they were better able to help me work towards a solution that worked for everyone.
I think something that I personally struggle with is like empathy for me came a lot of connection with like the kind of boundaries I set between me and the outside world. So like as I grew on learning what cognitive empathy was, I also learned how important boundaries were in your life. So like Katja said, like empathy looks different in like everyone, and especially with people with BPD. And some people with BPD also struggle with like maintaining healthy boundaries. So like I think it's like important to keep in mind that whenever you are like you want to have an emotional conversation where you're in need of support and like somebody to listen to or somebody to feel your pain, or you need an empath, it's better if you just like ask a person that, do you have the mental capacity to listen to my problem right now? And I have been practicing this with my friends for the past 2-3 years, and it has solved a lot of interpersonal conflicts between us. Like if somebody just asked me like, are you in the best position emotionally and mentally to listen to my problems about this, I can be honest and say like, I just feel really overwhelmed today and I can put it off till tomorrow, and they would understand that. And if I'm okay with it, I'll just go on with it. So I think it's been really helpful. And yeah, that's like one important thing that actually helps my brain when it's very dysregulated, to also understand that the kind of person that I am investing in also cares about me and my emotional response.
Something that I think is important to remember is that everyone has limits, right? Everyone is going through things, and just because somebody maybe reacts or responds to something in a moment in a way that could be perceived as unempathetic doesn't mean that they're lacking in empathy. Because I think sometimes because of the public discourse on BPD, people jump to that very quickly as an immediate maybe indication that people with BPD lack empathy. No, people with BPD are also human and have human emotions, and sometimes, we've had enough as well. And that limits our capacity to be empathetic and compassionate just like everybody else.
Thank you everyone so much for watching. We hope you got a nugget of wisdom to take with you on your journey. We will be back on Sunday for a brunch episode. And then next week, we'll be back with a brand new episode topic. If you can't wait until next week, our top 2 tiers on Patreon, our BPD buddies and our BPD besties, already have early access, and theirs is an exclusive extended cut. So if you'd like access to our early release extended cut episodes, head on over to Patreon, link down below, and sign up for our BPD buddies or BPD besties tier, and we will see you next time.